Hello, fellow hitchhikers. In this video, we are continuing the lore series for the Solarbots and taking a look at the Illskagaardian lore that has been presented. This one is not as tight or as concrete as the Locrian lore. It was a little bit harder to navigate and took a little bit more work. So hopefully you appreciate this oral summary of what I was able to glean together and pull out of the various accounts. So we have this, it's currently in the hidden page of the Solarbots. It hasn't been moved to its own page. I think on Wednesday after the public mint, I guess we'll get our next leak of lore. I'm assuming it will be for the third and remaining faction. So a couple things that really contrast Illskagaards versus the Locrians. They kind of parallel and contrast. So the Locrians were all about the word and what you say, and really faith-driven, and body modification, and so on. Prayers, religious sort of rituals and ceremony. The Illskagaards have that to an extent, but in a completely different way. They are about what you do. It is the actions that matter, not what you that you say and then don't follow through with. You know, they keep their word. What they say is what they will do, and they value hard work and an outcome that looks right and works well together, that is efficient, that is streamlined, that is well designed. They would actually sort of see labor as active prayer. If you don't sit and pray, do as you pray, or do as prayer, I suppose. The story itself here is told from the narrator's point of view of a character named Lorel, or I think Laurel or Lorel, but probably Laurel, goes through a little bit of an account between two characters, an Elizabeth, who is known as Ellie, and then another character which for the longest time in the lore I kind of thought were two characters, and that's Cole or Colton. But I'm quite determined that they now are the same person, just sort of the name interchanges. As it begins, we have these two characters, Cole and Colton. Colton being jolly, also hardworking, and a little bit of a drinker, similar to the father figure in the Locrian Empire. And he has a wife, Ellie. Ellie is designed some of the first safety mechanisms in Illskagaard. Together they run and manage, continue to develop a train system, a locomotive company that revolutionizes the infrastructure of the Illskagaardian Empire. Now, Illskagaard Faction is in the far north. It is very cold, lots of snow, and timber is actually, because they're in almost an Arctic tundra kind of environment, timber is a very desired commodity. It is referenced a few times. Anyways, there's lots of stone, and the stone is what is used as the foundation in the hard rock for building their buildings, for running their trains on, and building their infrastructure. They do have a few interesting structures that is referenced. There's the Comfort Gem Hospital. They also have this power station called the Kierkegaard Power Station, and it's referenced that if that power station doesn't exist, if it wasn't there, they would freeze. And the power station is run by solar stones, which provide heat and warmth and power. And so my immediate thought was that in some sort of military battle in the story in the future, that'll be a key target to attack by enemies. Before I jump too far into this story, I've given you a good summary of the characters. I want to jump over to the page that was released on the homepage, and just has a bit of a summary about Illskagaard itself, the ancient history. So there's a feudal lord in the ancient times who discovered the steadfast sapphire. So we had that lunar ruby for the Locrians, which was red. We have this steadfast sapphire for the Illskagaards, and it's a blue color, and it's a little bit different. It doesn't grow in moonlight like the ruby. This is sort of ever growing. It has a certain fidelity like to use it. It's ever faithful. And so as you chip away stones and remove stones off of this steadfast, it will grow and replace itself, providing sort of an endless supply of these sapphires. Of course, these will be used in our Solarbots for powering the Solarbots, and depending on the cut of the gemstone and how it's used and the placement in the parts, it will have various powers, buffs and debuffs that it can be used for. At least that's my understanding. They also have some references to a bank that tried to control the Illskagaards by controlling lumber prices and sort of trying to control the market that way. But with the use of with the sapphires and with their wealth and with their power, they were able to overcome this bank called the Hanging Garden, and then divert a river so that it flushes over top of this bank. So you can see these people are laborers, they're industrial, they're engineers. They continue to shape and tame the earth in a way through machine and through sort of style. It's almost a steampunk northern Viking kind of feel, maybe like an Asgardian kind of style. It's quite cool. They are a rougher timber. There's a couple swear words. I didn't love that in this piece of lore. It's trying to create this sense of sort of rough, hard, powerful people. The leader, we will now take a little look at the story of the leader, jumping back over to the lore. So as I mentioned, we have these two characters. Colton is the one person. Colton and Ellie, also known as Elizabeth, who fall in love and are running this train infrastructure. And one of the things that Cole was doing was building this great tower, if you will, this grand tower of rock and stone and rail going high into the sky. I almost thought of like a Babel, I guess you'd call it, sort of biblical Babel, reaching to the moon, reaching to the gods, kind of starred and up at such altitudes that you could barely breathe. So he's building and erecting this giant structure, and Elizabeth, or Ellie, is maintaining the railroad and the safety mechanisms. And as the story progresses, we get to a point where the sun is causing the metal to corrode wherever it's shining upon. And this is similar to what we saw in the Locrian lore, where the sun was causing the sickness. This seems to be causing a sickness in metal as opposed to a sickness in the people. And it's as she's directing workers to repair and maintain this metal that's being destroyed, things kind of go wrong, and we don't get full details. It's almost like she starts to lose her mind. She has this look on her face as she's using a screwdriver on this control panel, and there's this reference to possibly something with the abyssal. The Lorel, our main character, talks about this abyssal nonsense, but it has an uppercase A. And so I think we have the introduction of some sort of enemy, as the sun is causing sickness in people and in metal and working its way. We also have reference to this ancient story. Lorel likes to sort of jump around lots with references to different things and come in and out. And so we have this ancient story about a planet with no big gems or sunderin or a great fire. So I think these are comparisons to things that have happened in Illsgardian history, and it makes references to there being this caretaker of a garden, but of course there was a snake in the garden, again somewhat biblical, and makes a funny point about how there's always at least one snake in every paradise. Maybe that's reference to the story, as we have this, what they perceive to be a paradise, and foreshadowing of this abyssal that's going to come or disrupt their way of living. Either way, Ellie ends up jumping in front of the train as it's coming in, and it's part, it seems like maybe because she's losing her mind or because of the exposure to this corroded metal. The workers refer to the shadow that could be seen over the metal, kind of a somewhat shadow. So again, we have this reference to shadows in both of the lores. Either way, she jumps in front of the train and she dies, and it leaves this red stain. This, of course, is very upsetting to Colton, who climbs up his structure, and he has these sort of finishing touches that he's doing up there with these rails. I don't know if the trains are going to be going up to these grand heights, but he ends up falling to his death and freezing. And I don't know if he jumps on his own, or if just grief takes him, or if he just doesn't have the strength. And so this causes our narrator great sadness, and Lorel takes it upon himself, sort of in memory of his dear friends, to climb this tower and to finish what his friend had begun and repair these rails. And while he's up there, he starts to hallucinate as well, similar to the other story, and sees this bird or flying creature of some sort, and the river Styx almost, where you have to give the ferryman the coins. It's this sort of hallucination, and he's certain that he sees Ellie and Cole there in the clouds and has some sort of interaction with them, and becomes quite sick while he's up there in this delusional state. I don't know if it's like altitude sickness or something like that, and he climbs all the way back down, and in doing this, it's seen as this mighty feat, this mighty accomplishment to be able to do that. And so the council grants him title of High Hammer. He's known as High Hammer Lorel Gunthar Harlsson. Old Scratch, basically, is a bit of a nickname. So that's the development of Illskagaard. A couple characters that maybe will become pivotal, and some references as we can see the abyssal shadow and the sun slowly taking the minds of the different characters as we enter into, I think, a grand battle that will unite these factions. Hopefully this Wednesday we get one more leak looking at the Arborea faction and its connection to nature. So quite excited about that. When it comes out, I would recommend looking for color. What color? I'm suspecting green, but I don't know. And looking for some sense of foreshadowing or shadows, some sense of shadows and how that's playing, and perhaps the sun. They seem to be weaving through the three different factions. I look forward to reading it very much. As always, keep track of your towels and don't panic.